But whenever
I
you're
like the
ready.
beach behind you. The beach behind you is really
Thank you.
pretty.
It is actually our finance person's office. Mine is a little bit more drear. It has another person in it. So, hey everyone, my name is Aidan Sharon. I am the Associate Director of Global Earth Day at earthday.org. Today I'll be speaking with Abigail Hopper, who is the President and CEO of the Solar Energy Industry Association, the national trade organization for the U.S. solar and storage industry. Abby is laser focused on creating the policies and conditions needed for the solar industry to lead our transformation to a 100% clean energy economy. Before joining SEIA, Abby served in the Obama administration as the director of the Department of Interior's Bureau of Ocean Energy Management and as the director of the Maryland Energy Administration. In addition to being a mom of three, Abby is a lawyer by training and is both an avid Cavs fan and a Peloton enthusiast. How are you doing today?
I'm great. The Caps won last night.
Woo! So, Abby, for the listeners tuning in today, can you tell us a little bit about the organization you lead, the Solar Energy Industries Association?
Sure. So it's a little bit of a mouthful. We call it SEIA. And we are a trade association, which probably only of us that live in Washington know what that means.
Right.
But basically, we represent businesses. So we represent companies all throughout the solar and storage supply chain. So everyone from the folks that put solar panels up on top of roofs to the ones that build them in huge deserts, the manufacturers of solar products, the financiers of solar products, the companies that grade the land, right? The companies that maintain the software equipment. So sort of everything in the solar and storage ecosystem and everything in the marketplace, right? We have federal advocacy. We have a whole state affairs team. So we're active across the United States. We have a comms department, a membership team. We co-own the largest energy, not just clean energy, but energy trade show in North America, RE+. We have a research department. So there's over 100 people that work here. It's kind of a wild, in addition to being in addition to being an expert on solar and storage policy, I also run, a tens of millions of dollar organization. It's a pretty great gig I got going over here.
That's pretty impressive, seeing as you have three kids, are a lawyer by training, and are able to keep up with sports still, which I am not able to do at all. But what are some of the key goals that you guys are working towards at SEIA, or for yourself even?
Yeah, well, so SEIA and solar, more importantly, solar and storage markets have been growing steadily over the last, I've been here for 8 years. I just celebrated 8 years on last week. And so that's our continued growth, right? Like our continued growth is our goal. Solar employs over 280,000 Americans right now. We're a $63 billion business, right? So it's like not a little nascent science experiment. It is a fully formed big business. But my goal and our goal is to make sure that solar and storage can continue to deploy. So that means everything from certainty with regard to federal policy, with regard to siting, with regard to tax incentives and financing. That's the big goal. I would say the second big goal is making sure that the vast majority of the solar and storage products we use are manufactured here in the United States. We've made huge progress on that over the last couple of years, which I'm happy to chat more about.
Yeah, I would love to hear about that. And then I've heard, especially jumping into this role, solar is a pipe dream, which is something that's been said for the past 50 or 60 years now, despite its immense growth, but whatever.
Despite all evidence to the contrary.
Yeah. Give us the solar landscape in terms of how much of the grid is truly powered by solar energy, and then how fast is that scaling up, and then what does that look like compared to maybe 5 years ago?
Yeah, no, it's changing quickly enough that I could imagine a world where someone might have said that 5 or 10 years ago. Right. But their data is completely wrong. It's out of date now. So Just to give you some perspective, like SEIA just celebrated its 50th anniversary last year. So we've been around as an organization, have been around for a long time. Um, and the technology has been around for a long time. It produces electricity, like sort of all of those fundamental truths are true. And what has changed is the cost profile, and that has come down dramatically over the last 10 years or so. About 7% of America's energy is produced by solar. And you might be like, oh, that's not that much, Abby. But like when I got this job, it was about 2%.
Wow.
So it's scaling quickly. It took about 45 years to get the first half of what we have installed and 5 years to get the second half of what we have installed. And it'll take about 2 years to double that. So like the rate of implementation is not steady. It is exponentially moving upward. As I said, 280,000 people working in this space right now, double, triple, quadruple in the next few years. But one of the it's far from a pipe dream, right? It is the most economic, the least cost option in many, many, many electricity markets. And that's really why people are going solar, right? Because they want to be able to pay their electric bill. That's really important. But the other place where it's not a pipe dream is the manufacturing space. So we have gone from not really having a large manufacturing base in the United States to by the end of this year, we'll be able to produce all of the modules that we need for the U.S. solar market here in the United States. So we'll be the second largest producer only after China. That is light years from where we came. So if someone told you like solar manufacturing is a pipe dream 5 years ago, they might have had a point. That is no longer the case.
So we're seeing a lot of significant, tech advancements, not just in the solar field, but in those last 5 years. What are some of the most exciting innovations that you're seeing when it comes to solar energy that you think are really going to shape the future of the industry? I know you mentioned manufacturing. Could you dive a little into that? And then also maybe the cool technology that people aren't really familiar with, or it might not sound like sexy technology, but we talked with someone about heat pumps and things of that nature as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, who doesn't love a heat pump?
Yeah, I know.
Right? Well, so here's one that has really changed the market over the last couple of years, and that is bifacial panels. So if you think about like a solar panel on top of a roof, it's usually just laying flat on top of the roof, right? One side is down against the roof, and the other side is collecting solar energy. And that's still the case, honestly, for a roof. But in the utility scale, or sometimes even in the commercial scale, they are producing solar panels that are the panels on both sides, the cells on both sides, so that not only do you see it from the top, but all of the light that gets reflected down onto the ground and comes back up is also being captured. And that increases the yield per panel. Think about like, if you've ever been a place where it snowed a lot and the next day is really sunny, like the bright light coming off the sun is so intense. Like think about capturing all of that electricity as well, all of that energy. So that's really exciting. And the second is storage, right? That's the other place where people think it's a pipe dream, right? Like whatever. That's not true. It's actually happening. It's happening quickly, and it's happening for lots of reasons, the most important of which really is resiliency, right? Because if you're home and wherever you live, if you do have solar on your roof and the power goes out, unless you have battery, your power will go out, even though you have solar, right? Because it's part of this interconnected grid. But if you have a battery or storage at your home or at your business, you can disconnect from the grid and be your own little power grid while the rest of the system is down. And for me, like as you said, I have 3 kids, so the ability to like keep all of their electronics charged is a lifesaver. But more seriously, if you have medical equipment, if you have technology like communications equipment, if you are a grocery store, and you're going to lose a half of your foodstuffs if the power goes out and your freezers go down. It makes a lot of sense. If you're a medical facility, if you can just imagine, once you start to think about it, how important that kind of resiliency benefit is. That's where I see the market changing a lot. Like, think of LA fires, think of floods, think of whatever. Those kind of situations are happening so much more frequently, and giving consumers the ability to have choice and power their own homes through those weather events is critical.
Yeah, I mean, I come from an area that was hit by hurricanes all the time.
Mm-hmm.
From down to Branson, North Carolina, I went to school down in Wilmington, North Carolina. So there's a lot of constant hurricanes, a lot of, do we go out and buy a generator? Is our generator that's gasoline powered still able to run? Solar kind of seems like it would have been helpful at that time, but the technology wasn't there yet. It sounds like today we are.
Yeah. And just think about the noise, right?
You kind of touched on this a little bit, but as we grapple with climate change, how critical do you see solar energy is to the U.S. meeting its climate goals or its previous climate goals, and then such as meeting those goals that were outlined in the Paris Agreement?
Yeah. So I had the opportunity to go to COP in Azerbaijan this fall, and one of the main messages we took to COP and that I took away from COP was that solar is the only technology that can help us meet our climate goals. And the reason I said it that way is because we're going to need all of them, right? We're going to need every technology. We're going to need every form of electricity. We're going to need all of the things, and solar is the easiest one to deploy. It's the fastest one to build. It's the least expensive. It's the most scalable, right? From rooftop to desert and everywhere in between. And so as we think about the US meeting our contribution to global climate goals, solar is going to make up the majority of that. And so you can't address the issue without solar being a significant part of the solution set. Not the only part, but a significant part.
I guess kind of on the other, not complete other side of the spectrum, but how is solar energy going to contribute to the U.S. achieving that greater energy dependence that so many countries, or independence that so many countries are looking for? Yeah. Especially considering, we're going through a global energy crisis, it seems on a near constant basis now. And then will this help play a role in reducing our country's reliance on fossil fuel imports?
Yeah. So yes, let me just answer the question. It will. How? Well, let me tell you. So we're actually at a really interesting moment in history where we have growing electricity demand for the first time since World War II. And that has completely changed the energy markets, right? Instead of a kind of a constant downward slope for the demand for electricity, it is also growing exponentially, right? With AI and manufacturing and data centers, right? And so there's a real risk there's two risks. One is just load. Are we going to have enough electricity? And where are we going to get it from? Right. And so solar is so well poised for the reasons I said, because we can build quickly, because we're the lowest price, because we're clean. We can help meet that electricity demand so that we can keep all these industries in the United States. We can fuel them with clean energy, and we can keep, the carbon footprint down. So yes, we will definitely help our nation and any other nations that are deploying solar like we are energy independent. And that's where the manufacturing piece comes in too, right? So that not only are the electrons keeping us energy independent, but the manufacturing of the products to generate those electrons are also keeping us independent. We've spent a lot of time in the last year, 2 years, 4 years building relationships with other countries that share our values. So China is the number one consumer of solar power and manufacturer of solar product. We are number 2 in terms of market demand. Brazil is number 3, Germany is number 4, right? Like it sort of goes down the line. The EU in general is a huge market. You don't break it out by country. And so, we're talking a lot with those countries about using our technology there, bringing some of their technology here so that we are, each able to be independent and not have like these other geopolitical issues interfering with where we're getting our electricity from.
And can you go a little bit more into like getting a job within this industry?
So there's some interesting like factoids. About 2/3 of our jobs don't require a 4-year college degree.
Great.
A lot. So if you think about solar, a lot of solar is construction. We're building big energy infrastructure, either on roofs or, on warehouses or in fields. So that is one pathway to entering this industry is through the construction. And particularly the trades like electricians. You can imagine electricians are the primary source of skilled trades, welders, laborers, like kind of all of those folks. But we also have a ton of marketing people. We have a huge number of government, politics. Policy is so important in our industry. Finance, right? These things do not get funded by themselves. And so, I'd have a hard time really coming up with a degree. It'd be a fun little party trick, like try to name a degree that's not relevant or a life experience that's not relevant, since degrees aren't, as I said, are not the prerequisite. But there's a difference between saying that here on this podcast and then people in high school or in vocational school or in college seeing themselves in this industry. And that's a big part of what we try to do as well, is kind of highlight the opportunities that are here.
This is also another question I got asked recently, actually, is how can solar still support our energy grid at night or when it is cloudy outside?
Yeah, it's such a good question, right? It's like breaking news. Sun doesn't shine all the time.
Yes.
I would say, well, first of all, like the presumption in that question is that solar would be the only source of electricity, right? And I think that's a false premise. Like anything, like your investment portfolio, your 401k should be diversified. And so there should be different technologies with different attributes. Some, like the wind blows more at night. Offshore wind is particularly strong at certain parts of the season, right? Like geothermal is there pretty much all the time. Like hydro is a constant source that you can ramp up and down from very easily. So first of all, it's a portfolio. But the second is storage. I mean, storage is such a game-changing technology that it's hard to overstate the importance it has and will continue to have on our electricity mix. But that's the real answer is the diversified portfolio.
I'd want to talk a little bit about some of the common issues or common questions we're asked about when it comes to solar.
The one that I hear that is more troublesome, and like we heard it in Texas at the end of last year when there were some pretty significant hailstorms, and some of the solar panels were hit by hail and cracked. What we heard was that there were toxic chemicals being leached into the groundwater because of that. None of that is true.
Yeah.
That is absolutely false. First of all, there are not toxic chemicals in solar panels. Like there are the majority of the material in solar panel is organic. It's SEIA, which is found in the Earth's crust, and they're not toxic material. So that one I would say is the most pervasive and the most harmful, right? Because people get afraid if you're thinking about ruining the water table in your community.
Yeah, and it's also, we don't, at least fossil fuels, like the production of petroleum,
Right. Well, and I think you raise a really good point, Aiden. Like solar is not producing kind of in a vacuum, right?
No.
Like consumers, utilities, states, corporates have choices to make about where they get their electricity from. Because like we're going to be using electricity. what we use. So we see this a lot, like on the permitting side, right? Like someone, perhaps there'll be opposition to a particular solar farm. And, you know, sometimes that can be frustrating to the solar developer because they're like, well, okay, well, if we don't build more renewable energy, it's not like we're going to stop using energy, right? That's naturally not one of the choices on the table. The other choice is to build more carbon emitting energy. So those are the choices, not yes or no, right?
Before we close out, I just want to ask you, what are your big plans for Earth Day? I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about what you're planning on doing for Earth Day 2025.
2025, I am going to be celebrating it in grand style. I'm not gonna reveal all of my plans. I will either be here in Washington, where I am right now, or I will be in one of the most beautiful cities across our country celebrating. But we will absolutely be celebrating with you, hopefully.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Abigail. I really appreciate it, and I hope we get to talk to you again soon.
Wonderful. Have a wonderful rest of your day. It was good to talk to you. Thanks for all your good work.
Have a good one.